Welcome to the Women's Sanctuary, the podcast about tending the soul of women, sisterhood, and the rise of the sacred feminine. I'm your host, Arlia Hoffman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Arlia, and I'm so thrilled to be here today and to have a guest, and I think it's going to be a fantastic conversation. This person and I met in a group of women that we have in common, and realized that we had some themes in common and decided a conversation was in order. And that is Jessica Dawson, and she is in New Zealand. Jessica, as an activator of soul and business potential, Angelic Reiki Master Teacher, Transformational Coach, and Intuitive Astrologer, Jessica Dawson is on a quest to activate powerhouse women into rapid alignment with their authentic soul mission. Her heartfelt prayer inspires purpose-driven women into unapologetic ownership of their full power, voice, and radiance, so they can build thriving businesses that allow them to share their gifts, wisdom, and heartfelt message with the world, and make a positive impact on the future of humanity, all without ever having to sacrifice anything or anyone they love. My goodness. Welcome, Jessica Dawson.
Thank you. And it's so lovely to be here. I feel really honored and just safe to be in your space. So I'm grateful. Thank you.
What a powerful introduction. Like, oh my goodness, that's like, you know, and this is the reason, we feel the alignment, just this recognition of helping women come into their full power, owning their own power, and stepping into whatever it is they're called to do. Let's not jump ahead too far. I would like to really start with how you came to this work, how you got here. How did you get here? What brought you here? Tell us about your journey.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the first thing I need to say on that is that this has really come from not being in my own full power and experiencing the fallout from that, and the pain and the suffering and the disempowerment. And then having walked this journey to being in that space now, being in my unique gifts and understanding the importance of that for women, and also the challenge of that process, the challenge for women to really step into that space. It's not necessarily an easy thing to do with the different conditioning and cultural structures that we have, that, we're currently working through individually, collectively. So I'm really passionate about that. And just, I guess, to bring it back around to my own journey a little bit more, I was reflecting on this last night, thinking, how am I going to introduce myself? How am I going to share a little bit more about my journey? And I was reminded that some 10 years ago, I was working in corporate banking, supporting corporate and institutional, so business customers within the banking sphere in marketing and sponsorship. And it's just so hilarious that I end up back around here supporting this time women in business with marketing themselves, with putting themselves out there. And so, it's kind of like these really amazing and curious themes that run through our life, but they show up in very different ways, across the course of a lifetime. But for me, that working in that corporate world probably was my biggest catalyst, at least to send me on the search to find my true self and my true expression. And I think, like many awakened women, we're trying to operate within this old world, and it doesn't feel right. Something doesn't feel right. We're like, what's wrong with me? Everyone else seems to be feeling fine. Everyone else seems to be handling this kind of corporate lifestyle and the fast pace of it. And why am I not able to, keep up with that? Why does this not feel right to me? And so that propelled me into my journey off the back of a breakup with a then partner, and I spent quite a while really exploring yoga, Ayurveda, these sort of things, knowing that there was something in this. But it probably wasn't until about 4 years ago that when I started teaching Angelic Reiki, which is a really beautiful modality. Just we really open to channel these multidimensional frequencies. Very easy, very beautiful, very heartfelt. And it was through that, I think, that I first started to get an inkling of the joy of how it is to witness a woman, suddenly recognizing, wow, that's in me too. Like, I can do this. I have these gifts. I have these abilities that I didn't even know necessarily that I had. And so that's kind of oftentimes where people first come to me, right? They come through wanting to amplify their gifts, their healing gifts, their intuition, and this kind of thing. But ultimately, for a lot of women, and certainly was the case for me, we get this calling to step into even more of that and turn those gifts into basically what we do for a living, so we can fully and completely devote ourselves to this work. And so that was what happened for me. And when I really started, when I tried to step into that space of running my own business and, bringing my unique gifts, my uniqueness, my wisdom, my full self, more of my spiritual self, more of my embodied and balanced self into my life as a business, it was really hard. Like, I really, yeah, right? This is like the biggest challenge, and oftentimes the biggest reflection of where we're blocking ourselves. So, I hit block after block after block. A big part of that was really, despite having worked in corporate all those years ago, a big part of that was really not knowing how to work with business in a 3D way. I sort of had this spiritual side and this really 3D side, but I wasn't able to bring the two of them together. And I think that's where a lot of, teachers, coaches, healers oftentimes will get stuck, is in that merging of the two worlds. And also the other side of that was that I really, although I knew on like a very deep level that I had this calling, that I was here to step up and I was here to, be a leader and to bring something special to the world, I wasn't embodying that. So I didn't really, it wasn't alive within my humanness. And I didn't really know what my uniqueness was. I wasn't really able to stand in that. I wasn't really able to stand in my unique message and let that message, the passion of that message, carry me over and through the fear. And I felt like I projected a lot of stuff. I put other women on pedestals, all of this stuff. And so, it was a full process of going through that and claiming my own uniqueness, taking ownership of my magnificence, overcoming the fear, really, to get to where I am today, and helping other women, to move through that process. Because there's just, when we're all in that perfect place, we're perfectly divinely designed to be and to operate through. I mean, the divinity and the synchronicity and the synergy and the harmony of that is just beyond words. It's so far beyond words. And I am so passionate about, all of us being able to have the opportunity to experience that.
I love that. Yeah. The harmony and synchronicity. And then this, you just alluded to this, wanting everyone to have it, the sense of there's enough to go around.
So much so. Yeah.
I want to go back to that place where you and you recognized other women get stuck. First of all, I'm sure it was quite a process to develop your spirituality and get to a place where you said, okay, I have gifts and I have gifts to share. And then turning that into some sort of business that supports you and puts your work out there in the world. What did you what did you learn about that, about getting stuck, and what have you learned since about how women get stuck there?
Yeah. This is such a huge and beautiful piece to dive into. And in many ways, I would say that this is a very huge theme within the sisterhood wound, right? Mm-hmm. Because there are so many, there are many, I just want to acknowledge, first of all, talking about the sisterhood wounding, is that, there's many different experiences that women have. Not every woman has the same ones, and, they come through in different degrees. But this one that I've personally really experienced, and many of my clients that come to me do, is this one around really being unable to own our unique value, to own our unique contribution, the absolute brilliance, the sheer magnificence of who we are, and really being unable to step into our success, to be seen in our success, to feel safe in our success, to feel safe to take up space. Because, this is a collective systemic thing, right? Where women, women have been held within boxes, and their place, generally speaking, has been only in the home for millennia. And so it's only now in recent times that we're seeing women explore the possibility of stepping out there and running their own businesses, and, pursuing passions outside of the home, and believing that they have something unique to contribute, believing that their voice matters and that their voice counts. And so this is the piece that I see is where a lot of women get stuck, is they don't know that contribution has been so suppressed over a millennia. It's come through the ancestral line, it's come through past lives, it's that we just don't know what our uniqueness is. Oftentimes we don't know what that unique value that we add is. We don't feel safe to be in it if we do know what it is. And so certainly, that's where I really got stuck. And it was years of having to dig into that to eventually realize, actually, that that was the wounding of the suppression of the feminine. And yes. And that was really the breakthrough moment for me. Was like, oh, this is not me. This is this patriarchal patterning that I'm trying to operate within.
That's so big. That's so big. And I think most women are aware that something's off, right? And there's something cultural that is, a lot of women are aware that something is off culturally that doesn't fit us. But is that how you would define the sisterhood wound? Is that overlay of the culture that really has suppressed our own knowing and our own knowing of who we are, and our own safety to be ourselves and to live that? And I have a follow-up, but I wanted to stop there. Is that how you would define the sisterhood wound?
That has been my experience of it. Yeah. I do think there's possibly other pieces, but for me, it's really around, owning our worth, because if we really claim our worth and command that space and feel safe to be in that space, then nothing external can kind of affect us. We actually attract in the reality that reflects that to us. So yes, I would say that. Yeah.
And because we're calling it a sisterhood wound, how would you see that playing out in women to women relationships?
I just love this question. This is where I'm going to dive in and share a lot more about my experience, because when I first started to explore my spiritual side, and I think this happens with a lot of women as well, is there's this calling to kind of just digest and immerse in all of this, and to find tribe and to find community, and to find that place of belonging. And on the surface there can be, it's like, oh, these people are spiritual, they must be my tribe, and without oftentimes recognizing that we're in these spaces because there is a wounding, because there is pieces and traumas and old pains and limiting beliefs that we're working through, and others are as well. And so what can happen, and not always, so I just don't want to overgeneralize, but what can happen is that we get attracted back into that wounding, and how would I say this? So my experience is that I just so wanted to fit in, and I so wanted to belong, and I so wanted to find that sisterhood, that I put myself into situations and scenarios and circles where I actually didn't feel that we're called on the surface, these goddess spaces, these spaces for women to grow, this amplification and support of the feminine. But what I actually didn't feel was, I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel acknowledged. I didn't feel supported or appreciated within these spaces. So on one level, there was this voicing and this, I don't know what to say, like the surface level that this is a safe space for women.
The lip service.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. You know this, obviously. But it didn't marry up with what I was actually experiencing inside. And that, for me, created a lot of confusion coming back into that piece of like, well, what's wrong with me? Everyone else seems happy in this space. Everyone else feels, appears to fit in and feel comfortable, and I don't. Yeah. So this creates more feeling of division, more feeling of separation, more feeling of not good enough, more alienation, and shame. The shame that keeps us silent about what we're experiencing. And it's like, well, these people are spiritual. This should be why, what's wrong with me? So coming back around to that same piece.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're naming all of these things that we all experience, and we don't realize we're not alone. Right. And so we step into these sacred spaces and we bring all our baggage. Everybody brings their baggage. But, the woman across the room, she's got the right outfit on. She's got all the right moves, and she's saying all the right things. And that's the perfect tool for us to, for all this imposter syndrome and this shame and all this baggage to come up that we may not even be aware of. And yeah, I've experienced all of that and seen it happen among women. And it takes an incredible amount of, I don't want to make it sound inaccessible, but it takes some work to be able to at least acknowledge what's happening. And a lot of people never do. And they end up leaving more hurt and sadly traumatized than they were before when they came into the space, because they or the people in this, other people in the space didn't know how to work with that. I would say move beyond it, but you don't really move beyond it. You integrate it, you acknowledge it, and all the things we do to do that healing individually and together. It's funny, as you were talking, even though I was also thinking of, the yoga and spiritual environments I've been in, I was also thrown back to my childhood in religion. Because I would walk into, I was born and raised in Christianity, and there were more times than I could count as an adult, I would walk in, sit through an entire service, and just be heartbroken through that experience. And I couldn't quite name it, but something made me feel so isolated and so alone. And I'm sure there are women who experience that in a yoga class or an ashram or a sacred circle or a red tent, because we haven't quite figured out how to see the wound, meet it, and meet someplace, as Rumi says, meet someplace beyond that, in the heart space, because we've got so much wounding to deal with in the meantime, So I I so appreciate you speaking that into existence, and seeing your experience in that context, and helping women move through that.
Yeah. And I think that, and that's the key piece, is that we need to speak about it. We need to bring it out into the light so that we're not suffering alone in the silence. And when we recognize that others are experiencing this, it's like, okay, all of the walls fall down. Maybe there's not something uniquely wrong with me personally. And I think that what you say is just so beautiful, that ability to move beyond, to know that there is a place beyond that. And that comes from bringing it into the light, and then also making those choices and those decisions that I deserve more than this, that I deserve to feel seen, I deserve to feel heard, I deserve to feel safe, supported. And if I don't, then I should absolutely be questioning that reality and creating changes.
And what occurs to me is that maybe even before we understand that we deserve it, is to know that it's possible. To see the spaces where it actually, that's been my work with the Women's Sanctuary, is just to create a safe place, or a safe space to be all of who we are as women. And then be able to say, oh, yes, this is actually who I am. I am safe. It is safe to be me in this space. And oh, yes, okay. There's that voice of not enoughness, which I can understand we all have, and it's not real. And oh yes, and this process then is like, oh yes, I deserve to feel safety. It continues to blow me away that our culture, and here you and I sit on opposite sides of the world, so we're talking humanity in general, not only doesn't support it, but doesn't even recognize it as a thing that we need. The safety to be okay with this, the ability to be safe with each other. And that I've had more than one woman say to me after a temple practice, I didn't even realize how much I needed this. And so it is all about that awakening, that awareness of, I'm sitting here just gesturing because I don't have words, that awakening to something beyond what we've all been enculturated to believe.
Yeah. Because you don't know what you don't know, right? On some
that's
level,
why we're here.
Maybe, but yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's why we're here.
Well, tell us, share with me how you had all the experiences that showed you what was going on inside of you and what was happening among women, and how did you move into working with that?
You mean supporting other women in that space?
Yeah.
It's a good question. I'm just really thinking into what was that shift. And to be honest, I'm going to bring it back around to, again, my own experience, where I recognized that I wasn't putting myself in spaces that were allowing me to be fully seen and fully heard. And I was aligning myself with coaches and with friendships that felt safe at one level, but subconsciously I knew that if I were to go to another level, there wouldn't be space for me, that wasn't okay and that wasn't safe. And I think through my own healing process, I was guided. This came to me divinely, making the decision that that wasn't okay for me anymore. That was my personal decision, was like, actually, this sort of experience is not okay for me anymore. Show me the way, divine, show me what needs to happen, show me what path I need to follow, because I wasn't seeing it outside in the world. I honestly hear very few people speaking about this. And so it had to come from within me. It had to come from beyond me. And I was divinely guided actually so I live in a really, not really small, but a relatively small rural community in New Zealand. And when I arrived here 3.5, nearly 4 years ago, I didn't have community. I left a lot of those communities that I was speaking about earlier in the city where I grew up. And I came up here and I didn't have the community that I craved. It wasn't available. And so I was divinely guided to set that up. I was divinely guided to create a space, a women's circle that I call the New Light Sharing Circle. And it's a co-creative space. It's not just led by me, it's led by all of us. And it was through following that divine guidance and leaning into my own blocks that I had around it, around who would come, how open and present people would be, whether it would manifest, whether anyone would want to be around me, whether it would be rejected, that I moved through. There were 3 iterations of that circle, and on the third one, it fully anchored. Mm. And we had a completely different group of women there from the first circle. There were 9 of us. And so it was through following, and it was just beautiful. We spoke actually at that particular circle about the sisterhood wounding, the jealousy, and we just normalized this and brought it out into the light. And so I went from having no community in, as I said, a relatively small town, to now we have 35 people in our community. And you just would never have known until I followed this divine guidance that there were that many women out there in our local space calling and craving for this community. So I feel that actually was the pivotal turning point for me, was creating that circle, believing in the guidance that was coming through, and my own desire to create a space that was very different to what I had personally experienced, in the past. And it was through that, I think, that gave me the confidence that I could do this, that I was doing this. And then I started to bring that into paid offerings and to translate that into, actually, I can really do this for a living. I can really do this, on a daily basis to support women.
That's beautiful. I love that. Mm. So now what does Divine Sisterhood mean to you?
Divine Sisterhood, it means everything to me. It's such a foundation for our safety in the world, for our ability, at least at this time in our evolution, to practice being seen, to practice, or be able to make mistakes in our learning, to be imperfect, and yet to still be held and safe with that, within that space. It's really, for me, such a foundation for our unity, because, ultimately there is no division, but if we look from the perspective of where we are now in a world where there is still polarity, we've got the masculine and the feminine energies. Obviously, most people, I would imagine, listening to this podcast know that's not necessarily feminine and masculine bodied, but these energies that we have within us, and the feminine must lead for us to change and shift out of this paradigm of separation and division and hierarchy. And the feminine must lead, the unity, the connection, the feeling, the love. This must lead. And so for us to find that safety within ourselves, within our own feminine, and then expand that into a more immediate community and bigger and bigger and bigger communities, this is how we change the world.
I'm with you. I'm right there with you. It's a pep talk. I love that. And that's so aligned with, my perspective as well. I'm curious. So you have developed this circle of women who are aligned in sisterhood and are practicing it. And then you took it into your work in the world. So how is that manifesting now in your work?
So all of my work, I would actually say, comes back to helping helping, I don't know if it's quite the right word, holding a space for a woman to step into and accept and reclaim her uniqueness, her magnificence, her right and ability to be successful. And so although I help women to build businesses, this is everyone that comes to me is wanting to build a business. They'll be at different stages in that process. It's really coming back to claiming that unique power. And so we look at, identifying a woman's unique message based on her own story, her own lived experience, her own transformation, her genius. So, the unique genius, that essence of light that nobody else has like you, and when we step into that space, that is really where there's no competition. You just can't. There cannot be competition when we're in that uniqueness, and that's where we come into that synergy and that harmony. And looking at the confidence to step into your power, to use your voice, to feel safe, to be seen. These are all of the sort of things that I support women with through various different offerings that meet them at different stages of the game, because we move through different stages in our process.
I love that. Say more about genius, a woman's genius.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we were speaking about this a little bit before we jumped on, weren't we? So
yeah, I can't wait to hear you talk about this, because I saw it and I was like, ooh, what is that? Tell me more.
So, I think there's many different ways. There's a lot of people that speak about genius, and so I have my unique perspective on it. We all have our own unique perspective, and that's what's really beautiful about it. And for me, it's a twofold piece. The first is the point of brilliance. So this is what I was just speaking about, which is that unique radiance, that unique light that only you can bring. It is essentially the essence of who you are. It is your core radiance, and that true authentic light. And this is something that carries across all time, across all space. It's not subject to any particular reality, or it's with you. It's you. No matter what place or situation you find yourself in, I like to call it your unique contribution, because it's the light that you radiate and contribute out into the world. And it's the basis of your voice not necessarily being the words that you use, not necessarily being, what you say, or even necessarily what you stand for, but the frequency that you emit. That frequency that has the ability to stretch out through all time, space, and dimensions and have that impact across the board. So that's the first piece of the genius. And then the second piece is really specific to this lifetime. It's specific to, how are you encoded? And this is where the astrology comes in, is how are you specifically and uniquely encoded and designed to show up in this lifetime? How do you best express that point of brilliance into your life? And what does that actually look like as it starts to show up in a more tangible way? And this is, I know for me, this was really quite a big turning point when I discovered and accepted my genius, which is, my kind of place of purpose, I suppose, for this lifetime, which is really around helping to coordinate and hold space for others to step into that light and to step into that magnificence. And so there's that twofold piece. There's just the essence of who you are. I shouldn't even say just, the beautiful, magnificent essence of who you are, and this piece of, what place do I play? What role do I play in this lifetime? Like, how does that play out for me? How am I designed to actually show up and make this tangible?
Yeah, you're talking about all these pieces, and there are so many pieces that go in that help us, inform us of our own brilliance, our own largeness, of our own genius and gifts. So tell us how you work with the genius piece. I saw something called the Genius Codes. What is that?
Yeah, the Genius Codes. So it's part of my signature framework, which I offer out as an individual mini-series. So it's a 2-part mini-series, and we dive into, and the first part is that unique radiance, the point of brilliance, reclaiming that light. And this is really about moving beyond the shame oftentimes, and the darkness and the fear that can keep us really, really bound. And that part that we feel is our nemesis is actually, our greatest gift, which we speak about that a lot. I mean, I hear this spoken about a lot, but to actually step into that and transform that and flip that is quite a big process of self-ownership. And then the second part is where we look at the place of purpose. How am I actually designed to show up specifically and uniquely in this lifetime? And this is actually what I call that first piece is the voice, and the second piece is about our belonging. It's about finding that place of belonging and not trying to put ourselves in someone else's shoes because we've seen someone else doing it like this. I want to show up like this. It's like, no, let me claim my unique space, my weaving, my thread within the divine tapestry of life. Because when we get into position, this is when, everyone around us can find us. I have this, and my guides brought me to this piece of like, when you step up to the table, they will be there. But ultimately, if you're not standing in your place as a leader where you're divinely designed to be, then your clients, your community, they can't find you because they're looking elsewhere for you and you're not there in your place. And so it's so important that we come into that place.
Okay, we need to say more about this. I want to expound on this because I love the way you said that. When you're in position, people can find you. Mm-hmm. I have something similar. I call it sitting in your own seat. Like, owning your own perspective, being in alignment with yourself. But this is something somewhat different. I love the way you said that. You said when you're in when you're in position, people can find you. Just expound on that some.
What's really coming to me as I think about that, the first piece is really stepping into leadership, self-leadership, but also bringing it back around, I guess, to what I was saying earlier with women. It hasn't been common. It hasn't been, the thing for a woman to be a leader. And so oftentimes to step into that place of leadership in our own life, and it doesn't necessarily have to look like leading a massive community. It's where are you supposed to lead? Where are you supposed to shine? And that could be in your family. It could be through, your creative gifts, like if you're making jewelry, it could be whatever it is, but where are you supposed to lead a particular movement, a particular thread, and to claim that and really own that actually this is my divine place. I do have this important purpose to fulfill, and to step into ownership of that is really, really key, because we do all have that unique place that is waiting for us to step into and claim. And so what else? I did want to say one more thing on that, which was it's really stepping into or beyond, I should say, that voice that says, well, who am I to? Or why would someone want me to XYZ? Coming from my own experience of, it was like, I coordinate stuff, I organize stuff, and it's like, well, you're just annoying, like you're being a controlling this person, or perfectionist, or you're bothering people, and it's like
those voices in our head that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, those voices, it's like stepping beyond them to claim what is already yours.
And then you said they'll find you. Who finds you? Your people?
Your people, your tribe, your community. We don't go to find it. We find our own position. We get in position and it finds us.
Yeah. You're speaking of the receptive space where you just are, right? You're so aligned and so owning of all of who you are that you are naturally magnetic.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the magnetism. Absolutely.
That's so beautiful. That's so much easier than I got to go find my people, right?
Yeah, that's hard. That's really hard.
It is hard. So these are called genius codes. I mean, that's kind of the process where you help help a woman, or as you hold space for a woman stepping into knowing all of who she is. And you said you use the intuitive astrology as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a piece of what I bring into the second part. So that's where we look at how your unique blueprint basically for this lifetime is playing out and how to leverage that. Because it's all there. It's all literally written in the stars.
Yeah, I do a lot of, as people on this podcast will know, I do a lot of astrological study. I said before we came on the air, I'm an armchair astrologer because I'm not really trained, but I do a lot. I read a lot. And that leads me to something else I wanted to cover. And that was, I was looking at your website, and one of your most recent blog posts really caught my eye. It talks about business trends for women in the Aquarian age. And I'm really, I feel a lot of energy around the Aquarian age right now, because I feel like women, or in general, people don't really get it. They don't understand what it is. And because we are in a chaotic time because of that type of transition. So what does that mean to you, and how does that impact a woman in a spiritual profession right now?
I love the way you just said, we're in a kind of chaotic time, because I think that's important to speak into. We're in a transition.
Yeah.
We're still kind of leaving behind a lot of those patterns of the Piscean age to come into knowing what the Aquarian age is. So it is kind of messy.
If you would speak to that first, and then we'll talk about how about women in that space.
Yeah, so moving into the Aquarian age, we are stepping out of more of a like one size fits all, one rule for everyone, and the guru consciousness. We're stepping out of that kind of God outside of me consciousness and moving more into our individuated sense of self, which is about owning the unique light. And this ties in perfectly with what we were just talking about, and in standing in your own magnetism and your own unique radiance, which is what we're all learning to do. That's where we naturally attract to us the like-minded tribe, and start to experience ourselves in that place of synergy and harmony. And so it is very much, to put it very simply, comes back to what we just said around finding yourself, finding your own unique light, owning that authentic light, being in that heart space, because the polarity of the the Aquarian energy is the Leo energy, which is it's the divine child. It's the I have something special to share. I have a unique destiny. Let me be in my heart. Let me be in my playful sense of self. And then that naturally balances and magnetizes in the community, which is the Aquarian energy. So we're working with both sides of this, and you can't just work with the Aquarian energy of diversification, it's kind of quite an electric kind of energy, without also bringing in the heart-centered energy of Leo. So it's both sides of that we're working with to essentially realign ourselves as a collective. And it's also an experience where there's not one size fits all, where we are going to see many different communities, and it's actually okay if you don't resonate with a community. It doesn't mean that you're wrong, and it doesn't mean that community is wrong either. It just means that you're wanting to oscillate and vibrate and be in a different frequency, be in a different part of time and space, and maybe weave back together at a different point down the track. It's just like, I want to experience this place now. And, if that vibration changes and takes me somewhere else, then I'll experience wherever that's taking me.
I love the way you express that. I've understood that as, we're moving out of the one size fits all into this place where because we can stand in our own uniqueness and our own power and own that, I see then the natural extension is I can respect you and love you for the uniqueness that you're showing me in front of me, and that there's that mutual love and respect for whatever we're inhabiting and choosing and being. And I just find it so interesting that it's I spoke of this recently. We're seeing just kind of the shadow side of that in our culture, where it's, we're polarized around all sorts of issues, but and expecting everybody else to be like us.
Yeah.
So I love the way you articulated that, because it just becomes this natural process of I'm owning who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then naturally drawing to me the people who are aligned with my beingness.
Yeah. And I can let then others be in their experience. And that's such a relief, to like go, oh, okay, I can just let them have their perspective, do their thing, and I can just get on with mine. I don't need to fight it. I don't need to change it. I don't need to make it right.
Yeah. I don't have to control them. I'm right here. I'm right here. So how do you translate that into a woman in a spiritual business? What does that mean for her?
I feel like I sound like a broken record, but again,
I understand. I feel the same way too. But we're talking about so what? How can she be integrating that into her work right now?
Yeah.
How can I be integrating it into my work?
Trusting the process. Trusting the process of following the heart and not trying to put yourself into business strategies, communities, even ideas, lines of thought that don't feel right to you. Like a very, very simple but powerful example from my own life was that, and I feel like this actually happens quite a lot when we step into receiving business mentorship. If we don't know anything about business, we really don't have any grounding or background in that, and we hire an expert to help us to, understand business, to build our own business, and they have a particular model or framework or way of working. And so we follow that step-by-step strategy. If you're on Facebook or Instagram, it's like you see this is the 5-step process that I followed to make my 10K in 10 days.
Yep.
And we think, well, that worked for her, so it should work for me. And then when it doesn't work, or if it doesn't work, it's like, oh, what's wrong with me? Again, coming back to that piece of like, why is it not working out for me? And so it's so important to follow that intuitive voice, the voice of the heart, the Leo aspect, that Leo energy, and to find and trust your own path. And so for me, this really played out with I had been trying to make this Instagram strategy work. Mm-hmm. Like everyone else is using Instagram. This is the way to build community. This is the way to build a business. This was what my teacher had taught. And it was like, why is this not working for me? Why does this absolutely suck and drain my energy? Every time I try to go and post, it's like 3 hours of energy. My nervous system goes into trauma. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. Is it ever going to get easier?
I know that feeling.
On the floor. Yeah.
Fetal position in the corner.
Yeah. Did it have to be this hard? To just suddenly realizing it wasn't in alignment for me. So I have an Instagram account. I haven't posted on it since December. And I let it go. And I just trusted that I had built enough of a community. I was in enough alignment for that to fall away. And I thought I was just leaving it behind. But of course, it's never like that. The divine path. We never leave anything behind. It always comes back around in another form. Yes. And that's really where I found myself in January this year, was like, all of the energy that was freed up, that I was trying to force into this strategy that just was not for me, suddenly came back around in a huge, beautiful burst of light, and the recognition that I need to speak on podcasts. So here I am. I need to speak on summits. I need to create my own podcast. And it's like these, which I would never have considered doing before I let go of the Instagram piece, because I thought, gosh, if Instagram is this hard, anything else is just going to completely blow my system.
Mm-hmm.
And that the nervous system, right, that's the Aquarian energy, because it wasn't in alignment with the heart. But with that energy freed up, now this feels so easy. Like, I am having such a wonderful time talking to you here on this podcast, and it just lined up and it feels beautiful. And I feel quite sure we're both receiving something magical from this because I'm in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the key piece, right, for a woman, is to trust her instincts, trust her alignment. If it doesn't feel good, if it doesn't feel relatively easy and flowing, and like things are starting to line up and synchronicities and opportunities are starting to come in, then it's probably not the right strategy for you. And we don't have to do all of the strategies either, right? That's that, like, you know, feeling like we have to do it all. It's no. It can be very simple and very easy.
So true. It doesn't have to be all the things. Just be all the things that feel right.
Yes, all the things that feel right.
I mean, it's such a process. I told you that at the beginning of the pandemic, the in-person women's sanctuary events fell away, and that felt aligned. And then the podcast came online, and that felt completely aligned. And since then, I have, am still continue to. That's a judgment, right? I still have to do this work. Well, but continue to see more layers of me externalizing my authority. Well, she's doing it this way. Well, that worked for her. And it is a continual process of coming back to, but what's true here? What's true here? And that's a definite growth process to really, really sink into self-trust. And it's a practice.
Such a huge practice. Yeah. Like, shouldn't say huge. Yeah. Like you mean continued practice, because of refining and aligning and realigning and realigning and realigning with who we are on deeper and deeper levels.
I love that, refining. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I remember years ago, I asked my teacher about balance, and she said, well, you can find balance at the moment, and then the next moment it's going to be somewhere else. Like, cause you're always changing. Every moment is new. And so, I think balance has become a less popular word these days, but I see it as a fluid balance, right? Like the river is always in balance, but it's always flowing and moving at the same time.
I love that. It's very much responsive, isn't it? It's moving with its environment and with the changing times. Yeah.
Absolutely. Tell me who you like to work with. What women do you come to you for this type of ownership work?
I love to work with the women that come to me, all of them. And most of them come to me because they have a sense of a very big mission that they're here to fulfill, some big calling. And they want support to get there because they don't know how to come into it. Oftentimes they really are not trusting their inner wisdom. They don't know exactly what makes them unique, what's going to make them stand out from the crowd, how it is they're going to show up in their life. Oftentimes they're like the wounded healer archetype, where they've been through some really big transformation and big shifts and changes in their own life, but they're probably not quite yet owning the value of that and how that can be used for good, because there might be still a little bit of resistance there around the shadow, and being able to really integrate that and to own it. And because it's one thing to own it within ourselves, and then it's a whole nother thing to really own it in the public eye. And so it's kind of like a slow process, I see, as like sharing my desire, sharing what I think could be valuable, what I think could be my gift in a safe space with one person, potentially, in the case of me, a coach, or maybe a friend. And testing that and going, okay, well, that was received, that was safe. And then, okay, now I share it a little bit wider, and I share it a little bit wider, and I share it a little bit wider until, it's out there and it's really impacting a lot of people's lives. So women come to me at various different stages of the journey. Oftentimes it's right at the beginning when they're feeling that call of like, I've done this training and all of these different things. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm a herbalist. I've done my Reiki training. I've done the EFT. But how do I bring all of this together? Because these modalities don't seem to fully express who I am, And so it's finding that unique way to stand at the center of all of those tools and those experiences and turn them into something that's cohesive, that feels authentic, that feels in alignment, that allows them to share their voice on a much wider scale, like not just the wisdom that they've learned through these teachings and these certifications, but their own lived wisdom. And to turn that into signature offerings, to turn that into, a message that heals the heart of others. So all sorts of pieces like that. And sometimes they come to me a little bit further down the track as well, where they're like, okay, I've sort of started exploring this, but I know I'm being called to go bigger. I don't know what that vision looks like. Oftentimes I work with them around visioning, finding clarity on those next steps, the unique strategy and the path that's going to work for them. So,
I love that. Love that. That's awesome. What else would you like to share about your work or anything?
I think I do want to bring it back around to anyone who's listening who might, be feeling like, oh, well, that's all right, for her, but that's just not my experience. Like I don't feel good enough. I don't feel worthy enough to step into this space. Could that really happen for me? Is that yes, it can. Yes, you are worthy. Yes, you can and do deserve to feel safe and seen and supported in every way, in absolutely every way. And that you do have the ability to create the changes and to create the shifts that you want to see in your life, even if it doesn't feel like that right now, even if you can't see the path forward. It's going, well, if that were possible, would I want it? And making that decision that yes, I am going to open myself to receive that next level. Yes, I am going to open myself to receive the guidance out of this place where I currently find myself, and then putting it out to the universe to show you the way. But we have to make that decision within ourselves first and then ask to be shown the way. So it's totally possible.
That's beautiful. Yes, it is possible. And I know that place well. And I know it also feels, it may feel like you're stuck there, but change is always possible.
Mm-hmm. Always.
Jessica, thank you so much for being here. I love hearing about your work and your perspective and your wisdom and the way you serve women. It's just beautiful. If someone wanted to reach out to you and get a hold of you and find out more about what you do and talk with you, how could they do that?
Yeah, the best way, because as I said, I'm not really over on Instagram. The best way would be to go directly to my website, which is jessicadawson.net. And I have all of my offerings laid out there. And you can just find me, reach out to me through the website. I also do have a Facebook group that I run with a beautiful sisterhood of women. There's 4 of us, and this for me is such a healing experience to be in a space where we're all serving together, we're all dancing together, and so we hold a space for women to I would say practice being in that bigness again, practice being in that celebration, practice sharing their wins, and for that to be okay and not boastful or egotistical, and just take those little steps into their magnificence. And that Facebook group is called We Are One, Celebrating Big, Bold, Beautiful You. So you do probably need to put all of those words into the search bar to find it, because We Are One is quite a common one, but We Are One, Celebrating Big, Bold, Beautiful You. We would love to have you in the space with us there if anyone feels the call.
Beautiful. I love that. I want to join. So we'll make sure that link is in the show notes so people know how to find it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your work, for what you do in the world, and for your gifts, and for sharing them with all of us. We're grateful.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's just been such a pleasure.
Pleasure is mine. Well, thank you for being with us, everyone. I will be back again next week with another episode and another guest, and I'm excited about that. If you like these podcasts, please do share and like and tell your friends about it. And feel free to email me some topic suggestions if you have any. I would love to hear from you. So for my guest, Jessica Dawson, this is Arlia Hoffman, and we will see you here again next time on the Women's Sanctuary.